We look now back at Berlin Wall, 1989. That was a historical. It changed. It ended an epic, and it began a new epic. This is the same thing. Westerners aren't quite aware of it, but this is the same thing right now. We are in the middle of a transition. It's a global transformation.
If you're finding value in what you're watching, consider hitting the subscribe button and turning on the bell notification. Oh, and don't forget to drop a comment. I love hearing your thoughts and ideas. By the way, we have got a ton of other videos waiting for you. And if you are ready to level up your mindset, come hang out with us in our private Facebook group called Mindset for Business Success. Welcome to Super Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Shahid Durrani. Today we have with us Mark. Mark has just moved to Kyiv, Ukraine, to start his own business, the Ukraine Business Network, with the goal of aiding foreign investors operating in the country and ultimately contribute to the nation's reconstruction. Welcome to our show, Mark.
Thanks for having me, Shahid.
My pleasure, man. When I read what you're doing, I was quite intrigued, because launching a company in a challenging environment like Ukraine nowadays, with all the tensions, is an audacious move. Could you share some unique challenges you have faced in the war zone, specifically having the language barriers and any financial constraint, or any obstacles that you went through and how you handled them?
Wow, the list is endless here, but
it's huge. Something that comes to mind.
For sure, no, I have numerous stories. Of course, firstly, thanks for calling this audacious. I've had friends and family use other words to describe my start a company here in Ukraine. I'll just give you a recent story. We were at a client. This is about 2 weeks ago now. 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. Ordinarily, this would just be a regular meeting, of course. And about 10 minutes into the meeting, there was a bombing that happened, and the bomb landed less than a mile from where we were holding the meeting. And it was a little bit strange, because ordinarily there would have been the air raid siren, the alert in the city, right? That would have gone off in advance, so people would have some time to prepare. For whatever reason, the siren didn't go off. So we're sitting in the room and we heard that, and we're like, that was a bomb, wasn't it? And then we continued discussing. 10 seconds later, another one hit, and instinctively we all got up and understood, okay, this is the real deal. So then we went down into the bomb shelter in the basement of the building, continued our meeting for about the next 20, 30 minutes, then came back up and spent the next hour or so with the meeting. And that's happened on a couple of occasions. I moved here in October. So over the last 5 to 6 months now, that's happened on a few occasions where Russia's bomb, missile, and drone attacks have interrupted just very directly.
I can imagine. Directly, yeah. And how about any government restraints or any issues on the end of setting up the business, getting the licensing, getting any specific permits you may need for that country? How are all those processes?
Actually, that has not been too much of a stumbling block, fortunately.
Oh,
and one thing that helped facilitate things is that I walked into a situation with my business partner. So the parent company is called Ukraine Business News, UBN, which is owned and founded by Andrew Prima, my business partner. And then he and I created this sister company, essentially Ukraine Business Network, off of that platform. So fortunately, we did have some of the groundwork already set. So as far as, to answer that question directly, that wasn't so much of an issue, to be perfectly honest, but it's more of the conditions of the war. So less about regulatory issues or licensing or certificates and things, but it's more about the issues that the war itself, the geopolitics of it, the border closure with Poland. I can just give you, these are things that you wouldn't necessarily consider in a Western business environment, but had a number of targets, of prospects who have been considering becoming clients, and we're getting optimistic they'd become customers of ours. But unfortunately, because of the war, the bombings, the delays in U.S. funding, corporate is watching all of this, whether they're in London or in Paris or in New York, and they just get hesitant, of course, to invest further in the market and make any business development expenses and marketing expenses, anything like that. So there's been a number of situations where we're very optimistic in our hopes of, okay, this sponsor's going to come in, this client's going to come in, but the geopolitics of it and moves in U.S. Congress and D.C. then dash those hopes. That's not necessarily, usually high-level geopolitics isn't necessarily dictating the future of your business if you're in a Western country. But in this particular situation, of course, these are the things we're looking at. And we feel that we feel the business sentiment. It's palpable on the ground here because the war has been going poorly the last few months, because of the delays in U.S. funding, specifically the confidence of Kremlin right now. It has a business impact. You can feel the consumer, the business demand, and we feel it directly, of course, the results. So that's where I would say the concern is more on that is political level.
And knowing all those concerns, and you still took this leap, is there something that we don't know for you to make this decision to open this business? You want to provide an opportunity for foreign investors to come into Ukraine and establish businesses. Hopefully the war is not going to last. It's obviously going to reconstruct into a thriving country. But is there something at this point that we don't know about for you to make this decision?
Sure. So I've been confident since the beginning. This would be a separate podcast to get into the historical processes at play here in Ukraine, what's going on. But this is at the personal level. This is my background. I have family on my mother's side from Western Ukraine, Eastern Poland, and then academically, I studied this region in university and in graduate school, etc. So I was drawn to the region. So anyhow, with that understanding of the historical context, in short, to be very brief, this is a historical process. What we're watching in this war is the collapse of the Russian Empire. What we're really watching is the collapse of the Soviet Union 30 years later. But this is the war that they are losing, and they will lose, to then end the Russian Empire, just like we watched in the last century. The British, the French empires die, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire. Now the Russian Empire has its turn to collapse, and then its neighbors, Ukraine, can then function as fully fledged Western states, which is what Ukraine has wanted for centuries. And Russia itself will then start to function in the future at some point through the trauma of this war to function as a normal nation, and normal in the sense of the Western European style, what we're used to in the United States and Western Europe and the rest of the world now. So the whole point being, I believe this is a historical process and an inevitability. It's severely traumatic, horrific sacrifices by Ukrainians, of course, but I do believe it's a matter of time. So that's fundamentally why I took this leap. I can't tell you exactly when that time is, but I do feel confident that as we move into, say, the second half of next year, we'll be in a position where we're talking about this war coming to some sort of ceasefire or moving towards a peace deal, something. That's of course my reading of events. I moved here at the end of last year in anticipation of building the business up and being the first mover and helping, obviously, encourage and facilitate Western investors in the country.
Yeah, it's the prediction that you have. Potentially, your firm could be the key man between the rest of the world and Ukraine. And the amount of goodness that you can do being in that position is next level. You can't even think about it at this point. But when everything starts thriving, it's going to be good.
No, absolutely. You have to think just in sort of the business and practical sense, the amount of money that will flow into Ukraine is going to be far larger than the Marshall Plan, for example, that flew into Europe, right? Because you're talking about one country and you're getting funding from all of Europe and the United States. The Marshall Plan, you got funding from the United States divided into several countries. So the amount of money that will be coming in could be just extraordinary. And then, yes, of course, you're right. It's being here now. It does. Look, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. This is what I want to be a part of.
Nice.
I
love it.
It's obviously not about dollars and cents. I have no income. Okay. I got promoted before I moved here. I got promoted on a Monday, resigned on a Friday, and then moved to Ukraine in October to build this business.
Yeah, that's ladies and gentlemen, that's human passion right there, because you see something that someone else may not see and you're betting the stakes on it, because it's like you were guided from the beginning to do this, how you picked the programs in your studies and your mom, and it was just the perfect match for what what you can provide and what is needed in the future. So I like it. Flexibility, adaptability, networking, they're the crucial skills for entrepreneurs, and especially in the environment that you're in at this point. How have your skills played a role in this journey while starting the Ukraine Business Network?
At the sort of professional level, fortunately, I've done a similar business. So I do have a track record of having done this business
Okay.
elsewhere and
Okay.
successfully. So I do feel confident in it, just the raw, all else held equal. If I were to set up this business in New York in a stable environment, I'd feel extremely confident this can work. It's going to move. We could do this. I've done this before. Obviously, it's and that's the issue. It's the intangible. It's the external environment that I can't control. I can't control Putin's head. I can't control Speaker Johnson in the United States and Trump. There's so many externalities that obviously I can't control. A lot of it is psychological and at the personal level. Moving here, it's stressful every day. There's air raid sirens every day. And then, as you mentioned at the beginning, starting a business in any environment is difficult. When you throw in these things you can't control in this external environment, it becomes very even more difficult. So exactly, the flexibility, managing expectations, and I would say behind it all, getting to the point that you were mentioning a bit earlier, and not to sound sort of cliche, but I do feel like my personal life has built to this moment for me to come here. And this is a historical moment. This is something we look now back at Berlin Wall, 1989. That was a historical. It ended an epic and it began a new epic. This is the same thing. Westerners aren't quite aware of it, but this is the same thing right now. We are in the middle of a transition. It's a global transformation. The next decades, 20, 30 years from now, are going to be dictated by events today, decisions made this week and next month and 6 months ago. And I want to be a part of that and contribute in a way. This is what I'm doing. And so to really answer your question, I feel like a sense of destiny coming here, being a part of this, doing this. And so in building the business, there's a great Napoleon quote who said, if you don't believe in destiny, you better start to, which I think he's right. Look, if you believe that I'm destined to be here and a part of this, then the little obstacles that come in the way, being in a business meeting and we got to run to the bomb shelter, it's just a little obstacle to get it out of the way, keep moving, and you go on. And so you take the hardships, you manage expectations. The client we thought was going to come in, the sponsor we thought was going to come in, then unfortunately didn't come in and turned us down. All these little things become sort of things just veer around, hop over, because it's just a little stumbling block on the way to the inevitable positive future, right?
No, definitely. That was awesome, Mark. Thank you for sharing. And you had some key points there because it's a journey. You're jumping on that journey that you were meant to be on. And I'd love to hear from you after the war, after things go, as you progress into this business. I'd love to have you back to link these two episodes and find out what transpired from this interview all the way up to the success that you will experience.
Yeah, absolutely. I would love to come back and let's see where we're at. What's happened, what happened in the interim, and how did we manage?
Yeah. So identifying and capitalizing on a niche is the most crucial part of any business. Obviously, you need to, especially in being so competitive nowadays for entrepreneurs. What strategies did you employ to identify this niche for Ukraine? Was there any specific steps that you followed? I know there's some passion behind it, but there could have been different directions you could have taken this. You're very specific at creating this specific umbrella that you did, right? This business center. Is there some steps that you followed to find this niche? And is there any specific reasons why you picked this niche?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be sounding far too arrogant and false if I said that I had this step-by-step process. But what I would say is that, so I've worked in this field now for quite some time, and then specifically in the events business, right? So just in brief, UBN Network, we do political, security, economic risk analysis for companies. We help them understand the external environment, what's happening with the war, what's happening with Putin's regime, what's happening, oil prices, China, US, European Central Bank, interest rate policy, et cetera. Bring all that down to what does it mean for Ukraine's economy? What does it mean for the future of the country, the political situation, interest rates, inflation? Bring it down then to corporates, to executives. They have a meeting with a retailer on Monday. How does that external environment impact their negotiations over pricing, for example? How do they make their HR decisions, raising salaries, cutting salaries, hiring staff, cutting staff, et cetera? So basically, all companies need this assistance. Okay, there is a niche insofar as we're not the only events business out there, obviously, And there's business associations, right? There's industry specific associations, and then there's European and American chambers of commerce and things like this that are helping businesses as well. The way we help businesses is that we help them understand that external environment and link it very directly to what does it mean as a consumer goods company this week, next week, in 6 months, and in a year from now, managing the business here in Ukraine. So really connecting the macro to the micro, as we always say. That's a niche business because most companies don't offer that type of sort of service and those analytical tools. And then secondly, giving a sense of the business environment and being very close to the market to do that. So every day, my business partner, Andrew, and I, we go out and we meet with the companies. So we talk to them every day. We know exactly what they're doing, what their pain points are, the challenges, the opportunities. We really know very well, and we meet with them consistently, right? They come to our events, we talk to them, we meet them in their office every 3 months, 6 months. So we have a very good understanding, having developed strong personal business relationships with them, which most companies don't have the resources to do that. That's why I had to move here. I had to be on the ground, go door to door and develop these relationships. But that's what clients love, because then they really get to know us. They build a strong personal and business relationship with us. And then also, since we're talking to so many companies, we're taking business surveys, we can then, yes, talk about the external environment, everything I mentioned. We have forecasts on the macroeconomy with the currency, inflation, GDP, consumer spending, yes. And we tell them our views on everything, on the views on the war and how this will play out. But then also we link it again to the business environment. We tell them this is what businesses are thinking and feeling and doing. And we know because we talk to them every single day. We say 3 months ago, they were thinking this. Now this is what they're talking about and worried about, right? And then it's interesting for them because, as I'm sure you understand, businesses actually can be very siloed, right? They speak internally a lot, but they may not actually know very well what all their competitors are doing and how the sector is performing overall. So it's, again, linking the macro to the micro in every dimension, right? In terms of macroeconomic environment, political, security environment, and then obviously the business environment and sentiment.
Great. Thank you, Mark. China's growing ties with Russia have significant implications both for business and politics, especially in that region. From your perspective, how do you see these relationships evolving and what kind of impact would it have on business?
Sure. So it's concerning because at a geopolitical level, of course, what is the future of China's relationship with Russia? Russia feels a bit more confidence, extricating itself, almost excommunicating itself from the Western world, the sanctions, loss of trade, everything, starting this war, threatening the Western order. They feel confident to do that because they can revert towards China. So at the geopolitical level, that's obviously worrisome for the future as they partner a bit more. But at the end of the day, China wouldn't, and they've had opportunity to help out Russia if they wanted to over the last more than 2 years now. And they have not to any notable extent, other than buying significant amount of energy and metals. And China is trading considerably with Ukraine. China's, as far as single countries, one of the largest trade partners with China. The drones,
so more neutral.
Yeah, exactly. They're supportive of Russia's antagonism and threat towards the West, but not to the degree that it would hurt China at all. And also, China remains a trade partner with Ukraine. Very specifically, the drone campaign that Ukraine has been launching, the innovations and the amazing achievements that they've shown in the Black Sea and on oil refineries across Russia, 1,000 kilometers from the border. These drones are imported. The parts are imported from China primarily, right? So China's benefiting where they can, and obviously they are helping Russia considerably. But yeah, so China's involved, and China also in the reconstruction. Two things: they're going to want to play a role, and they will be playing a role in the ultimate peace deal, and then in the reconstruction of Ukraine, China would like to play a role if the West allows it, of course, depending upon the terms of reconstruction. But of course, they would happily do that, and Russia wouldn't have much influence to stop that, of course.
Mark, drones that Ukraine developed, from personal experience and people I speak to, I feel that Ukraine has one of the best programmers in the world. The softwares that you guys create, the quality of the code and the creativity in how they perform and what you could potentially create in Ukraine is next level. Would you know the reason behind that? I was always curious, maybe more
Well, first of all, Ukraine has had a thriving IT sector now for years,
Yeah.
even prior to the
Yeah.
war. So the talent here has been remarkable. This has always been the tragedy of
Yeah.
Ukraine since the collapse of the Soviet Union. The last 30 years was large population, massive resources on the border with Europe,
Mm-hmm.
talented people, highly educated people. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, it wasn't tapped for a variety of reasons. But one of them was Russian influence on the country that made it one of the drivers of the high corruption in Ukraine for these years. But in either case, the IT sector has been thriving and for good reason. And I go around here, you QR codes everywhere. You can look at menus, pay for things. I was living in London prior to this, Western Europe.
Mm-hmm.
They have advances here that are customary. Everybody takes for granted in IT that are West is years behind, surprisingly, for a country at war. But
Yeah.
it's specifically to your question on drones. What's fascinating is this is a classic case of needs must. You're in a war, and so you then have these people who they bring their talents together and they get in contact with. And there's endless stories of just guys at home with different drone equipment and digital equipment and whatever it is, connecting with soldiers at the beginning of the war, especially, and just by WhatsApp and doing geolocation for their artillery so they could hit Russian targets. So you have a 20-year-old kid in his basement just writing on WhatsApp to a guy he knows in the military who conveys the geolocation to another guy in the military. You have to think that the resources is really phenomenal. But the point being, all the innovations in drone technology, which it's just massive. Every 3 months, there's new developments and then countermeasures for all these systems. And drone systems that were revolutionary, incredibly innovative in the first 3 months, 6 months of the war are already obsolete and they're not used. So they're not even in production anymore. And so there's just constant updates. They're a country at war, right? It's existential. So you start finding new ways to do things. And that's the beauty of what's going on here in Ukrainian society is it's really bottom up. You're seeing so much innovation and research and development. And it's just gathering resources from people and just crowdfunding from the diaspora abroad with all the refugees, obviously the population here, and then driving all these innovations of highly talented people to the extent, just a quick anecdote, several companies I've spoken to, they have corporate fun days, corporate team building days, things like this. One of the common activities is coming together and let's build a drone for the day.
Nice.
It's really
that's cool.
And they bring in tech guys who talk to them about the different features and how you can innovate here and different things like that. But it's beautiful in a way. Everybody is in the war effort, right?
Yeah. And Mark, I could see the IT sector being your biggest clientele because it would be a perfect place to launch a startup when it comes to technology.
Absolutely.
And because the talent is next level.
The talent is phenomenal. The experience that they've achieved, and then also the funding, the financing coming in, and then also the labor costs. You're talking about labor costs that are half the cost in Central Europe.
And the customer service, with my personal experience, I found how they deal with their customers is very professional, firm and friendly, but it's very comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's most definitely true during the war. The sense of collaboration and we're all in this together and working with people. That's definitely, and I hear that repeatedly from Ukrainians here that there's been an evolution in the business culture, right? To be fair, this was a former Soviet country where customer service was not the top priority, but it has shifted most definitely and intentionally. It's right. The sort of collaborative spirit of the war and the sense that we're in this together. And then also there's a spirit of we're not Russian and we're Westerners and this is how Westerners behave and this is not how Russians behave. And so that's another positive driver, I believe, of everything here. The business going forward for the future, the business environment, more openness. Generationally, you see this shift in the corruption environment improving very clearly already. Again, it's about national identity. We don't want to be corrupt because that's how the old days were, and that's how Russia is. And we're not that way. We're a Western Europe, we're a European country, and we're oriented to the West, and so we don't want to behave that way. And you can see and feel these things really palpable, really in front of our eyes, evolving, which is encouraging, of course.
Wonderful, Mark. I appreciate your time today, my friend. Wishing you all the best. I see that you're going to be able to serve and help many foreign investors coming into Ukraine and to develop and create some obviously wonderful technology. I see a lot of technology coming out from that area after the war. People are probably eager and just itching to start developing their ideas, and that'll be super exciting to see.
Yeah, exactly. Good. No, I appreciate it. Thank you for the time. It's been a great chat, and I agree. Let's catch up in the future and see how things have developed here.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks a lot.